Hello, I'm Tobey Nelson, certified professional horticulturist coming to you from Venture Out Nursery. Today we are here to talk about preparing your garden for drought. So the state of Washington has issued a drought declaration for 2024. And that seems a little funny to think about as we are having our rainy spring weather. But the issue is that we did not receive the winter precipitation in the form of snowpack to fill up our reservoirs adequately. And that means that as gardeners, we are stewards of the earth and we need to protect our water resources. So there are ways that we can make our gardens more drought tolerant. The most talked about ones we will cover towards the end of the video, but there's one that I don't hear people discuss that much, and it's a peeve of mine. So the best way that you can make the plants that are in your garden be most resilient towards drought is to be careful about when you start irrigating. I see so many people turning on their irrigation systems too soon. And what irrigating when the soil is moist does to a plant is it tells it that there's so much water available, grow like crazy. And so the plants will put on an abundant amount of leaf and stem tissue that then needs to be sustained and maintained during our dry summer and fall. And that is when we as gardeners then need to water like crazy to keep up with all that growth we encouraged. And that comes at the expense of our aquifers, our reservoirs, and our water bills. So by waiting until the soil is truly starting to get a little dry is one way that you can have your plants grow a more conservative amount of growth that then is more sustainable to keep alive during the dry times of summer. So our weather pattern is usually sort of middle of June to middle of July that starts to kind of happen. The best way is to use your finger to see if your soil is dry. Get a hori-hori or a trowel, jab it into the soil, pull it apart, stick your hands in. You want to be like 4, 6, 8 inches into the soil deep where the roots are and feel if there's moisture or if it's truly dry. Don't just touch the top. Get your fingers in there. Moisture meters, also not that accurate. Your fingers are the best guess. So make sure that your soil needs water before you start irrigating your plants. So the next thing we'll talk about is how to best water. So rather than using overhead irrigation like an oscillating sprinkler, one of those types, we want to be using drip irrigation or trickle irrigation. What that does is it puts the water right into the soil immediately instead of losing it to evaporation in the air and on the foliage. So water straight into the ground. Long, slow soaks are better than frequent, short bursts of water. We want to get the soil moistened deeply, so we encourage deep rooting, and so that the water is in the cooler part of the soil rather than that top layer that gets warmed by the sun and evaporates most quickly. Then come the things that we often think about, like mulching and choosing drought-tolerant plants, and those are all good so long as you follow it up with well-timed and conservative irrigation. When we talk about mulch, we think about compost or wood chips or bark, leaves. That's all good. Keep your soil covered. It helps keep the soil moist. The next best mulch you can have is a living layer of leaves. So rather than having the shrub, lots of ground exposed, shrub kind of landscape, we want to have plants that grow together. So let your plants grow. Plant more plants, and I'm not saying this is a sales pitch, although it's fun to sell plants, it's fun to buy plants, but truly, plant ground covers, plant perennials, add grasses, add smaller shrubs. What happens when we keep that ground covered by foliage is that as the plants transpire, respirate, makes a nice humid layer between the soil and the leaves, and so the water evaporates less quickly from the soil. So it keeps the moisture in the soil in the soil. It also shades the earth so the sun is not beating down on that soil and pulling the water out. And then, of course, choosing drought-tolerant plants is also very helpful and important. The other thing is that if your plants, so in this, I'm talking about more established gardens. So I'm not talking about veggie gardens, because of course they need more water. I'm not talking about your containers. And I'm not talking about young plantings that have been in the ground for less than 2 winters. So it takes usually 2 winters to establish most shrubs, perennials, grasses. Trees, it takes about 3 to 5 winters. So if you have trees that haven't been in the ground for that long, you'll definitely want to supplemental water them. But you want to do it smart with the long, slow, deep soaks. I hope that helps. Save your water bill, save our water resources. If you have any questions, as always, comment below or come see us at the nursery. Thanks for spending your time watching our videos.